I brought up Simone Biles earlier, just as an example of an athlete. And it occurred to me, there is not a competitive athlete at any level, at the high school level, who doesn't consider nutrition as part of their training. And I'm like, why don't we do that? If you aren't fueling your instrument, like I always say, we are our primary instrument. Like singers know this, but like even if you play the trumpet or the violin or the clarinet or whatever, it all starts with you. And if you're not functioning at your best, I don't care what kind of fancy, expensive instrument you have. I don't care who you're studying with. I kind of don't even care how much you're practicing or how well you're practicing. If you are not fueling yourself, you are not going to be in top condition. And reaching your goals is going to be so much harder.
Keto diet, intermittent fasting, carnivore diet, plant-based meat substitutes, all that, and you're still tired all the time. Today's guest is going to help us break down some myths, find out what works, find out what doesn't, and find out why you and me can't still make it through an entire week of performing and practicing without feeling like you're going to fall apart. We've got a bona fide musician turned functional nutritionist to guide us through all these questions coming right up on the Honesty Pill podcast. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 39 of the Honesty Pill podcast. That's right, you are here, you're in the right place. We are here to help you with all things music and productivity, whether it is getting better at your practice, your performance, your auditions, or just helping you try and function like a normal human being, which is, I know I'm still trying to do that every day. Our guest today is functional nutritionist and musician Stephanie Thompson, who is going to answer my questions, your questions, and probably even some questions we haven't even thought about food, energy, nutrition, fads, trends, and how to handle all that stuff as a working musician or just productive human being. So first, a quick shout out to the sponsor of this podcast, the Yamaha Corporation of America. Stay tuned. You're going to hear more about them later. Yamaha, helps me bring this podcast information to you, helps me get these guests in here totally free. Well, I lied. It's 99.9% totally free. All I ask is that you click like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Both of those things really do help us out and get the message out at Honesty Pill Mission Control. And thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. And speaking of which, we are live streaming this episode on YouTube, Facebook, and soon to be Instagram Live. So go ahead, drop your questions in the chat. We will try and get to them as much as we can. We have a lot to cover. There's endless amounts of information we could talk about. So I'm going to do my best to keep this focused. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Stephanie Thompson.
Hey, Chris. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. I was looking at your website, Stephanie, and there's a lot of letters before your name. MS, CNS, LDN, DMA. I think I know what the last one is, but what are all those? Could you give us a quick rundown of what all those initials after your name stand for?
Yes, my goal is to get the entire alphabet. I have some more coming up soon if I pass my next credentialing exam. But so CNS is Certified Nutrition Specialist. That's my credential as a nutritionist. What were the other ones I have behind there? LDN, Licensed Dietitian Nutritionist. And MS, Master's in Science.
Master's in Science. And what was your DMA in?
Performance. All three of my music degrees are performance degrees.
Right. So you're an actual musician who was working as a full-time musician in a professional orchestra, which we'll talk about in a minute. Before we get into it, what's the name behind your practice, which is called Well NOLA?
Well, my practice is well functional nutrition, and I had someone ask me once, is that meant to be snarky? Which it's not. I just felt like I wanted wellness to be at the focus of what I did. And I promised myself when I made this career shift that I would really include a branch of this for musicians, because I didn't want anyone to necessarily have to go down and, experience the same pitfalls that I did with my health and related to my music career. So, well, my husband actually came up with the name. He's like, well. And that just resonated with me. So there you have it.
I love it. Well, it's your husband's also a musician. It's worth noting. So It's relevant that you guys were probably having conversations about feeling good and having
or
energy.
not.
And right, we'll talk about that. I mean, what was it like? So tell me your musical background a little bit. Where did you go to college, and where did you end up working?
Yeah, I went to State University in Ohio, Dana School of Music at Youngstown State University. I did 2 degrees there. I was really lucky. It was a small pond. I got my first orchestra job when I was 20 or 21. Played in lots of regional orchestras, lots of driving and all of those things. Decided that I wanted to do a doctorate at a bigger school. And so I went to the University of Michigan for my doctorate. Loved my time there. Also played in, all the driving orchestras all over Michigan and Canada and Ohio. So that's kind of my performance background. And then right after my doctorate, I took, I was doing the audition circuit like everyone else. Won an audition in New Orleans. I'd never been to New Orleans, but we don't exactly pick, I always knew I was going to live where I got an orchestra job because that was all I wanted to do. So I got a job in New Orleans and came down here, and here I still am.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole conversation about what it's like to live in New Orleans, the good things, the culture, the food, but also the big flood. I mean, so talk about stress and managing challenges. You went through all that too, didn't you?
Yeah, we lost everything in Katrina. We had just bought our house in May, and everyone knows that probably that Katrina happened at the end of August. We had just finished kind of renovating the house that we bought in May, and then Katrina came, and there went that. So we rebuilt it. The orchestra rebuilt. It was a hard time, and it was also a really, in some ways, just such an uplifting time of people coming together. The orchestra, I've always said this orchestra is really special. No one is from, my husband is actually the only person in the orchestra, I believe, who is a native New Orleanian. And so we're all from everywhere else. So we all very quickly become each other's family, really important to each other. And that was really a crucial part of my story professionally and health-wise too, because I really leaned on wonderful people here as I was experiencing my own health issues. So yeah.
The orchestra lost their hall, right? It
We
flooded,
lost our
right?
hall. Yeah, we lost our hall. It's been since rebuilt. It's been rebuilt amazingly, but it took a long time. I should know this, but like 15 years or something.
I remember reading that the music library had flooded, and I thought, what an incredible tragedy to lose. I mean, it's paper. You've lost that stuff. Did you find, and I'm sure some of your colleagues, did you question, is this what I want to do? Are we going to come back from this? Should I figure out something else? Should I get into real estate? Maybe not in New Orleans.
Yeah. I got some swamp land to sell you. Yeah. At that time, I never questioned it. I was like, well, we'll rebuild. And I think that's just the spirit of the orchestra in New Orleans. I mean, they had been through adversity before I got there. And I don't feel like there was any question. We were going to come back. They came back from probably worse before. So there was no question. And yeah, I was like, well, we're going to rebuild the house and we're going to do it again. I did not question, was that what I wanted to do? And, I will say, even in my career shift, I never really questioned that I wanted to be a musician. I love being a musician. I just felt like this other thing became so powerful and profound and important in my life that I wanted to shift my focus that way. That said, I still play and I still do gigs, and happy to do them when I can fit it into my schedule. But yeah, I don't think there was a question about continuing on. I think it's kind of the spirit of the place.
Well, let's talk about that moment, actually, when you were sort of pivoting, or was there a specific moment where you sat down and said, I love being a musician, I love what I do, but I'm also called to this other interest, this nutrition and energy and food and how our bodies work, and dealing with personal health issues and then helping other people. When did you decide to really make a shift and commit to that transformation?
Yeah. Um, I think feeling the effects of these life changes that I made for myself to heal, to heal my own health. I think that when I kind of looked back and I was like, I don't need to sleep for 4 hours in the middle of the day just to get through my life, after 8, 9, 10 hours in bed at night. I can eat without feeling sick. I don't have headaches all the time. I'm not dizzy anymore. And when I realized how relatively simple it was, now we can talk about that, but how powerful food was in how this changed my health, I was a little bit like, why is nobody talking about this? I can't believe it. And we can get more into that later, but I just couldn't believe it wasn't anything. No one ever talked about this with us going through music school. It was, toughen up, buttercup, and things like that. It was really this like knuckling through. And so I kept getting this little voice in my head like, well, I want to talk about this. I want to help people with this. But I'm like, oh, I have this career. I'm very established here. I like what I do. It's not like I'm, looking for something because I hate what I do. I just kept thinking, but I want to do this. I want to do this. So I think I really committed when I sort of said, you know what? The time's going to go by one way or the other. I'm just going to try it and see if I can do it. So I had to basically cram 4 years worth of undergrad, science requirements into about 6 months, which was super not fun. Gen Chem, nope, never want to do that again. But I did it, and yeah, in 2015, I started my second master's in human nutrition and functional nutrition and all of that at the University of Western States. And I was just like, I'm going to see this through. And it was hard. I knew during that time I was kind of like breaking my own healthy habits that I had worked really hard to get healthy for, because there were late nights and lots of stress, but I just really felt committed to it. And I'm like, I want to see where it goes. And it got to the point where I just didn't feel like I could do both well. I wanted to really, I know about myself that I'm someone who likes to focus on doing small, fewer things very well. So that's when I decided to make the shift. And I think I left the orchestra 2 or 3 years ago.
Just to recap, for those of you who didn't pick up on those details, Stephanie did the thing that so many of my Audition Accelerator clients and people who graduate conservatories are dying to do. She got a job in an orchestra, a good orchestra in a beautiful city. And then she left that job to go pursue something else. And notice she mentioned 4 years of undergrad in 6 months. So I assume that you didn't have loads of free time, Stephanie, where you were like, I think I'm going to get an entire certification degree that just should take me 4 years. No, she didn't. And she still made that change. She still went for it, which I just want to give you some appreciation. That's a hugely bold move. And if you're listening right now and thinking about what are some things that I might do that are different than my current job, maybe you have an amazing orchestra job. Maybe you have your dream college teaching gig. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're freelancing. Maybe you're tired of freelancing. It's totally possible to do a change this epically huge. Stephanie is living proof. And as one of her clients, I can tell you right now, thank God you did that, because, and we can talk about this or not. I mean, I think the information that you gave me could possibly have saved my life, considering that I have such a big history of cardiac issues in my entire lineage. So thank you for that. All right. There's a lot of technical things to get into, so I want to jump into it. This is a question going out to, if you're in your car right now, if you're at the gym, if you're watching, I want you to answer these questions out loud or in the chat, okay? And we're going to see how much of these things you relate to as far as habits that especially musicians, but that many people have. Do you drink coffee to have enough energy for your day? Yes or no? Okay. Do you drink coffee to have enough energy for the day? All right, next one. Do you often eat standing up, like over the kitchen sink or during rehearsal breaks? I see you people at the rehearsal breaks shoving down that vending machine food. I see you. Do you eat in a rush? Do you scarf that food down without even tasting it? Are you often forced to eat at weird times, like in the car or during work calls or at 11 p.m. when you get home from playing Mahler 8? And the last one, do you sometimes feel moody and irritable for no particular reason? I knew things had gotten out of control for me when I was racing around my house. My amazing wife had made some dinner, put it in a Tupperware, and I was eating it while driving my car to work. Of course, LA traffic moves about 5 miles an hour, so it wasn't like I was up on two wheels. But do you guys relate to any of those habits? Assuming there's a lot of yeses out there, Stephanie, can you talk a little bit about the hectic lifestyles musicians often lead, relying on coffee for energy, eating at odd hours or on the go, and struggling with moodiness and sleep, which are obviously signs of really unstable habits?
Yeah. Okay. That's a lot to unpack. I'm trying to think. Let me start with something that I think musicians can relate to, and that's the importance of rhythm. And I've said this before, any audition committee wants, one of the first things they're looking for is good rhythm, and so is your body. And I think it's a challenge for musicians because as much as rhythm is a critical factor in what we do, our lives are very out of rhythm often. We are off, or we are working when other people are off. We don't have normal hours. We don't have the 9 to 5 that much of our culture does. So when we talk about living in rhythm, let's just take the big one, circadian rhythm, like daytime, nighttime things. If that's inconsistent for you, that can affect so many things, so many systems, your digestive system, your immune system, your mood, your cognition, your brain health, all of those things. And I think one of the first things that we need to kind of try to address is how can we put more rhythm in our lives, more consistent rhythm, like 5, 8, 11, 16 is great if you're, I don't know, Stravinsky, and it kind of spices things up. But how can we get more consistent rhythms in your life so that your body has something to depend on? So for me, that looks like, what's your wake up time look like? What's your morning routine? What's your bedtime? Do you have any kind of an evening routine? Do you eat 3 meals a day? Are they spaced out at regular intervals? Or are you eating at 7:30 in the morning and 10 p.m. at night? I think movement is important. Do you get some purposeful movement in your day? Not running to the hall because you're late for the downbeat, or, maybe you parked your car far away, but do you have some purposeful movement that you get in your day? Do you have some like social structures you can count on? If you're having a bad day, do you have someone you can talk to? Do you have people in your life in place? So part of it's, when I say rhythm, there's routine involved and consistency and stability in a life that is kind of anything but, especially like sounds like the week you're having, Chris, with all the demands of the orchestra.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I love that. Exercise doesn't mean running from your car to the next rehearsal. Although I'm happy to say that, so I've been doing this daily 6 streaks. Let me try that again. Daily, we'll fix all this in the edit. Don't worry. The
Liar.
daily 6 streaks routine. You say that 10 times fast. And one of them was certainly, I mean, thanks to my work with you, thinking about getting the right chemicals in my body. Chemicals, is that the right word? Molecules.
Everything's a chemical.
Okay. Sleep, hydration, and exercise has been a huge focus for me right now. And you know me, I like to deep dive on details, and I've been watching endless YouTube videos from home trainers and stuff. I'm not a gym guy, and I never will go to the gym, but I have the discipline to do it at home. So exercise has been a huge thing. But I have been that guy who, is running from one thing to the next. You know me well enough to know that.
We've all been that. And it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that you're like failing if that happens sometimes. That happens to everybody sometimes. I think we just we want to not have that be our default and the norm. I think we want to have some guardrails up in place for ourselves so that we can handle those times with more resilience.
Yeah. We're going to talk about some modifiable lifestyle factors that our listeners can actually implement later. And you have 7 of them, I think, that you like to talk about. But the one that I want to focus on now is, is sleep, because you started talking about sleep a little bit. What are some bedtime routines? What is sleep hygiene? Like, how can we actually? That's probably the easiest thing to start with, right? Is recharging
Yeah,
at night. What can we do to make that more impactful?
sure. Yeah, and I think routine is important. And the experts, the sleep experts, suggest going to bed within having the same bedtime plus or minus an hour. That's not always possible for musicians, right? Because as you say, we're playing like a Mahler concert and we don't get home till 11. Okay, so that didn't happen that night. But what other things can you do? What other things can you have in place? I have so many tips, tools, tricks, whatever for sleep. What I suggest is trying things and see what works for you. Some people like to journal. I love the idea of journaling. I just don't do it. I wish I would, but I don't. But maybe what works for you is, lavender essential oils. Okay, works for me. I like to diffuse lavender. That's a bedtime routine. I turn on the diffuser. Some people do stretches, some people do yoga poses, some people do meditation apps, some people use herbs like a cup of herbal tea an hour or two before bedtime. And I can talk about lots of those things. Chamomile's great, passion flower. I'm trying to think of some other teas, but relaxing teas. The thing is you don't have to do all the things. Your body needs some signals. And, even if it's just every night before I go to bed, I go around the house and turn off all the lights. I put on my pajamas. I brush my teeth. I turn on a meditation and I go to bed. Just giving your body some kind of signals. Maybe that happens at 11 some nights. Maybe that happens at 10 some nights. Maybe it happens at 1 a.m. because you had to stay up with a sick kid or who knows what. But if you can take like a most of the time approach, you're going to be so much further ahead. It doesn't have to be like 7 days. If it's 6 or 5, you failed. If you can get a most of the time in there, that's hugely different than what you're doing now.
But that's the challenge, right? It's not just musicians. It's anyone who's got
Mm-hmm.
an unpredictable schedule. It's so
Sure.
hard to figure. Like, I don't want to eat a big meal before a concert as a wind player, because it's uncomfortable. And then I really shouldn't eat a whole meal at 11 p.m., but I want to get my good nutrition in and I want to be able to sleep. So I can't drink that water right before bed and have to get up early for a youth concert. It almost seems like there's just too many moving parts and it's easier for me to just say, to hell with it. I'm just going to do whatever. And then I don't know about you or other people, but for me, if I don't have some plan, then I just sort of let go of everything and it just
You
goes
just
off the
said the
rails.
magic word. You just said the magic word, plan. Like if you are successful as a musician, you are planning your practice sessions. You're not a rando going into the room going, what do I want to play today? Oh, I want to play some Disney tunes. No, especially if you're working on a goal like a recital, you have a big audition coming up, whatever. You've got some goals for your I mean, if you're listening to Chris still, you've got goals for your practice. I know this. You need to
Yes.
have the same thing for your health. Simone Biles is not the success she is because she just like wakes up and says, "Oh, what am I gonna grab for breakfast on the way to the gym?" She's planned her week. She knows her practice sessions. She knows what her performances are. So I'm going to take your example, Chris. Okay, so well, I don't want to eat a big meal before my concert, but I have this concert to play. What am I supposed to eat? Nothing? Oh, that'll feel better. How are you going to feel midway through that concert when your focus is out the door and you're like, oh, please let this be over? So maybe that's a day where dinner is not your largest meal. Maybe lunch is your largest meal that day. And you make sure that you're getting a balance of macros, macronutrients, protein, fat, good carbs. And then you have something to eat before your concert that sits well with you. And that takes some experimentation. But I always recommend that there's some protein in there, and don't avoid carbs. Your brain needs carbs. And so then when you get home from said concert and you need to wind down, you've got a little bedtime routine in place, right? I'm sure, again, if you're listening to Crystal, you are hydrating well throughout your day and throughout your concert, right? You are at intermission grabbing some water. So you said the magic word is planning.
Yeah, it's funny hearing it out loud. That there's a really obvious answer, but I don't often think about my approach to musicianship in terms of nutrition. It's more of a reactivity thing. I mean,
Sure.
what's in the fridge? What do I have time for? I love that you mentioned trigger and triggers for sleep, things that trigger the end of the day for you. That's a really great tip. You mentioned lavender, you mentioned chamomile teal. What about bourbon? and I asked that question kind of tongue in cheek in that I'd love to talk about how alcohol affects sleep, because I think the myth out there, and we're breaking a lot of myths today, is that, a glass of wine or a beer after a concert, I get home from a concert and I'm at the peak energy of my day. My brain is the most engaged because I just got off of a very sometimes a very athletic type of a job, and it's hard for me to ramp down. So how does alcohol, which I know a lot of musicians go out for a beer or something, how does that affect REM sleep? What does that mean for our recharging of our battery every night?
Yeah. Is it okay if I back up just a hair and say, you get home from your concert at peak brain activity.
Mm-hmm.
I know where you work and I know where you live. So what are you doing in between there? What are you doing on that drive home to help yourself ramp down from that concert?
You called me out. So some days, if I'm being kind to myself, I'll listen to some music that I like and just sort of enjoy it. Steely Dan is a big fan. I'm a big fan of Steely Dan. I'll just kind of chill out to Asia on the way home, and it's nice.
Asia.
But that's a good one, guys. But most nights I am listening to a Huberman Lab podcast or listening to something about growing a YouTube channel. Like I'm working mentally, and I know that is not contributing to me ramping down. So I see where you're going there. But I can't meditate on the car, can I?
You can't meditate in the car. However, you don't have to be. So let me just throw a suggestion out to you. This is to you specifically because we're talking about you specifically. So by that time in your day, you are not necessarily in your highest dopamine state, right? You're sort of, we want serotonin to start kicking in so you can sleep and things like that. So great, you want to listen to something? I think that's great. If you're listening to a podcast that you're actively trying to pull information from, maybe that's not the best time to do it, because I'm going to posit you're not going to absorb as much information as you would doing it at a different time. And what if you listen to a novel that you like? You mentioned music. We all love music. But what if you're listening to a novel, like a just for fun thing? And it's a weird thing that I'm going to say this, but I've been talking to so many musicians, and we don't get to read or listen for fun. We are doing it often to cram more knowledge in, to learn a score. But doing something like listening to an audiobook, maybe, I don't know, somebody's autobiography that you like, or just a novel of a writer that you really like, that gets your brain in a totally different place that starts to take you away from that hyped up analytical work brain.
Oh, that works for my kids too when they're having a scary dream or something, or they're worried about spiders. We'll have them read a little bit of Warrior Cats or something, and then go to bed in the middle of the chapter where they're like lost in that world. So I think that's great. Routines are something to rely on when time is difficult or we get stressed out. So that's great advice. I want to talk before
Alcohol.
this. We want to talk about
you do
alcohol.
want to talk alcohol.
Just because I know that, I actually have been consuming so little alcohol. There's some great non-alcoholic beers out there, you guys. And I should start another podcast about beer, since I love beer. I'll just give a shout out. Best Day Yet. Is that what it's called? No. Better New Day. Oh, I'll have to get the right name. They make a hazy IPA that is fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's like 0.5% alcohol. So talking about triggers, if having a beer or a glass of wine is your trigger that the day is over, you can do that without the alcohol and not demolish your REM sleep, which actually you're the expert. Tell me about what
100%.
alcohol does.
Okay, so alcohol is, we think of it as something that's sedating, and it is. And so you might feel initially like it relaxed you, but it interferes with your REM sleep. So what happens is, my brain's going 10 miles a minute. What happens is you may fall asleep initially better, but your quality of sleep is going to be poorer, and you're more likely to wake in the night. Remember that alcohol, first of all, demands a lot of your liver. Depending on what you're drinking, the sugar content is quite high. So that demands a lot of your body's glucose regulation system. And so if we are having spikes of glucose and then drops of glucose, your cortisol is going to kick in sooner than it should and wake you up in the night. I've gotten really, this is from my own experience and from the client. I work mostly in women's health and my practice, as well as with musicians, but a lot in women's health. And I've become very aware of the detrimental effects of alcohol. I don't think you have to be a teetotaler. It's not what I'm saying. This is everyone's choice, but I'm becoming aware of how much alcohol metabolism can impair so many processes in our body, hormone health for women and men. So that's really been on my radar lately. So I like your idea of, if you are used to unwinding with a drink, you can get low alcohol versions, you can get no alcohol versions. There are so many mocktails. They're not any less expensive than the alcohol versions, mind you, but there are some really great alternatives to alcohol to help you wind down. A lot of times it's the practice, right? It's the
Yeah.
trigger. So the experience of, like, maybe sitting with your spouse and deconstructing the day, or with friends after the concert or something. So a lot of times there are other components, like if you're, hiding in a corner with a bottle of bourbon, maybe that's a different thing, but you know what I'm saying.
That's a different podcast, I think. Okay, there's a question in the chat. Let me see if I can add this. No, that's the previous one. I want to do the one before that. Hang on a second. How do I add this to the chat? Oh, I forgot how to do that. No, well, I'll read it. Some people, so this is from Julie. She's talking about that thing I said about getting home from a concert and wanting to eat. Some people cannot control their hunger. This is now being fully accepted by the medical community. They can't turn off that feeling. Often they're frustrated by what society says they should be doing to lose weight. Any thoughts on this? And she said, control, not crook, because it was a typo. I'm going to see if I can get this up on the screen while you're talking. There we go.
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like we took a little bit of a turn here, which I appreciate. Control their hunger. Yeah, I don't know if I'm on board with the word control your hunger. Maybe there's a little bit of a context she could share. I think we should always acknowledge our hunger. And there are different kinds of hunger, right? So are we hungry because we freaking didn't have food? Are we hungry because we are not eating a balance of macronutrients that support what we need to function as individuals? Are we hungry? Are we feeling hungry? Are we feeling empty because we're missing something else? Like I said, with a lot of my clients, I don't think controlling hunger is my lens. I think understanding hunger and learning how to nourish yourself is at least that's my focus with people. I take a very additive approach, not a restrictive approach with food.
That's a great answer. Yeah, control. Well, musicians love to control things, don't we?
Yeah, and no shade on I'm not trying to pick at semantics. I hope that didn't come across that
Oh
way.
no.
I think it's about your relationship, in my opinion, about the relationship you have with food, and understanding that, and understanding the complexity that food plays in our lives. Food is so many things in our lives, and we're talking about food as fuel often in a performance nutrition context, but food is celebration, and food is many things. So
Well, speaking of restrictive, there's a lot of trends in diets, and I mean, there's all those the keto, and there's the grapefruit, and what a fasting juice cleanse. There's so many that it's hard to even keep up. The trend that I'm hearing a lot about now, and if you're scrolling through Instagram, you'll see ads every 5 seconds for this, is intermittent fasting. What is it? What are the proclaimed benefits? What is your thought? Where do you stand on that?
yeah. So intermittent fasting is time restricted eating. So it's been studied for many things. It has intermittent fasting can be helpful for chronic illnesses, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cardiovascular disease. Um, Intermittent fasting does show some benefits. It doesn't show any more benefit for weight loss than any other caloric restriction. And what I've always said in my practice, people say, what do you think of paleo? Should I go keto? Should I do this? And I kind of say, it's kind of snotty. Maybe that's where my snarky is. If it's got a name, I probably don't like it, because I really feel like nutrition is personal, needs to be individualized. I think we're so attracted to, like, here's the blank diet that will fix this thing, because it's easy. It's a template. I can follow this. I can do this. I can do this. And this is what I get at the end, which isn't always what you get at the end. I think it's easier than finding out what works for your body. I don't think it's as sustainable. Regarding intermittent fasting, again, I work a lot in women's hormone health. I don't recommend intermittent fasting for those people. Men can tend to be a little more successful with it and not have quite the same whiplash as cycling women, or women who are postmenopausal may deal with that better. You want to fast? Let's start with an 8-hour fasting window. How about when you're sleeping? Because we're all fasting when we're sleeping. So, do you know what I'm saying? I think if we're after metabolic flexibility and body composition, we can do that with a healthy balance of macronutrients. That's just how I feel in my practice.
Could you just quickly define macronutrients for
Yeah.
folks that may not know what that is?
Yeah, macronutrients are like those big building blocks of our food that we need. That is protein, carbohydrate, fat. Um, Alcohol is actually a macronutrient technically, but it's not nutritive. And hydration.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first, folks.
I said
Alcohol is
technically. Technically.
and also fat. You said the word fat, and you also said the bad word carbohydrate. I mean, again,
Oh God,
there's so much like hype around these things.
there
You know,
is.
carbs are bad, eggs are bad, milk is bad. Like what? So you know, in our conversation, Stephanie, I have been one with the work that. So I'm one of Stephanie's clients, and you have had to really beat me over the head to stop saying things are good or bad. Stephanie, is this good? Are smoothies good or bad? Right? That's one of the first questions I think I asked you in our work together,
Was.
and it doesn't really work that way, does it?
It doesn't really work that way. And I hope I didn't beat you over the head. I'm really sorry. I try to watch my language around food, because, as I said before, it's kind of a loaded topic. I don't think there's a lot in food that is inherently bad or necessarily good. That's not true, but I don't think there's a lot that's bad. I think it's very individual. There are more nutritive foods and less nutritive foods, depending on your goals, depending on what you're after. What do you want that balance to look like? So, you know, if you're after better focus and energy, and your diet is consisting largely of ultra processed carbohydrates, meaning, the things that you get out of a vending machine, let's just say, and you're not getting fiber and you're not getting color and you're not getting protein, you're just not going to be performing in anything at your best.
That sounds like good information that everybody should pay attention to, myself included. Yeah, I will try not to compartmentalize. And I asked you to beat me over the head. That's my love language. So, okay, going to hit pause for 1 second. I have to give some love to the sponsor of this podcast, the Yamaha Corporation of America. You know what? I'm not even going to read my copy here. I just want to let you guys know I am not one to put products or companies out here to represent Honesty Pill or me, but Yamaha is actually one of those companies that I just love so much, and they've been so good to me. I have played Yamaha at most of the auditions that I've won throughout my career. The instruments are reliable. They constantly evolve. They actually listen to their artists in what kind of adjustments that they make. But most people listening or who play Yamaha probably aren't in the LA Phil. This is where I think Yamaha really shines, is their support and dedication to music education and bringing really professionally designed student model instruments into the hands of underserved communities and connecting them with the education and support and community that we all understand comes from learning a musical instrument. That is one of the things that makes me really support Yamaha for the work that they do. And they also help me bring this podcast to you free of charge. Other than you clicking subscribe on my YouTube channel, go there right now. Honesty Pill Coaching for Musicians. I want to hit 10,000 by the end of 2024. You can help me out with that right now. And if you want to learn more about our sponsor, Yamaha, head over to usa.yamaha.com to find out more, and go thank a Yamaha salesman or representative if you bump into one at the coffee shop, because that happens all the time. Thank you, Yamaha, for helping us out. Okay, Stephanie, I want to. Oh, God, there's too much to talk about. This might be a long one. You got time? Are you okay?
You let me know. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I want to talk about, so far we've talked about a lot of habits, a lot of things we can implement, awarenesses of frenetic lifestyles. Let's talk about things we can actually do something about. And I want to kind of get into, modifiable lifestyle habits. Like, what can we do? And this is from a training that you did inside my Audition Accelerator group recently, nutrition and energy for musicians. So we talked about number 4 already a little bit, sleep, but can you maybe pick a couple of these that are critical or important that maybe we can riff on a little bit?
Yeah, leave that up there for me. That's great.
Yep.
So, I'm going to just bang through this list really quickly. If we're talking, you want me to talk specifically about energy?
I think so, because I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, especially this week, is I can feel the energy levels are impacted by the amount of work I have to do this week.
100%. I'm going to start at the top with nutrition, because that's what I do. So add more color to your diet, especially the color green is lovely, right? Dark leafy greens, add dark things, dark berries. Those give you so many amazing phytonutrients, right? Plant nutrients that just do so many great things in your body. They're anti-inflammatory. Eat sufficient protein. I feel like a broken record. Protein should sponsor me, but protein's not a thing. Yeah. So protein, women particularly, America, but women especially, you are not getting enough protein. Eat more protein. And hydration. You would be blown away if you hydrate properly, how much that's going to impact your energy. And I don't mean just pound 4 gallons of water a day, because if you can drink too much water and dilute the minerals in your body. So throw some electrolytes your way, especially when you've got a week like this last week in the LA Phil.
What's the measurement of water? Like, how do we figure out how much water we're supposed to be drinking?
Yeah, so at a minimum, this is what I like to tell people. This depends very much on your activity levels, on your altitude, things like that. But as a baseline, see if you can get a half an ounce per pound of body weight a day. So, for instance, if you weigh 200 pounds, you want a minimum of 100 ounces of water baseline. And you're like, oh, I can do that. Most of us are not, right? And throw some electrolytes in there. If your activity level goes up, you probably need more hydration. If you're at altitude, high altitude, you probably need more hydration. So, and it's, again, that's a general statement. It's not specific to everybody, but that's a good place to start. See how you feel. See what you notice in your energy. Don't go. Here's a little tip. Don't say, oh, I heard on a podcast that I should drink half my weight in water, so I'm going to go do that starting today. Don't do that. Work up to it, because otherwise you're just going to pee a lot and you're going to be like, thanks for ruining my day. So work up to that amount.
Well, what you need to do is book a consult with Stephanie, and she'll give you a little bit of one-on-one information. I don't want to get too bogged, but you mentioned electrolytes.
Yeah.
How do we get electrolytes? Drink Gatorade? What's the way to do it?
Maybe not Gatorade. Sorry, Gatorade. There are many ways you can get electrolytes. Electrolytes are in our plant foods, those green leafy things and those colorful veggies and fruits. But to get a concentrated amount, these are minerals, right? Electrolytes are minerals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, those kinds of things that we need in very small amounts, but that really are important for like all the electrical charges in our body, the transfer of signaling from neurons and things like that. So you can get them in a concentrated form in like tablets. You want to watch the sodium content. If you are someone who should not have high sodium, you want to choose a lower sodium electrolyte tab. If you are someone who is a salty sweater, and you will know it if you are an athlete and you find like, white sweat stains on your car upholstery or on your gym clothes, you're a salty sweater. You probably can use a higher sodium electrolyte. But you can also make your own electrolytes. Just, nice filtered spring water, a pinch of some Himalayan salt, squeeze a lemon, and a drizzle of maple, because that little drizzle of glucose helps shunt those minerals into your cells. Are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing with you. So for those of you who know you're not going to make your own electrolytes, I can recommend Noon tablets, which I think Stephanie turned me on to. I do my ounces of water. I have it lined up for the day. And in my first glass, I drop a tablet. Actually, guys, when I first roll out of bed, the first thing I do is fill that water bottle, drop the Noon tablet in. By the time I come to consciousness, I drink it. It's like a gift. Like your body is just dying for that. And speaking of products, and you mentioned greens and leafy greens, what are your thoughts on like powders, like athletic greens? They're really expensive, but they're supposedly like great for getting that green portion.
Yeah. So if you're someone who hates vegetables or you will not eat vegetables, there are greens powders. What you're not going to be getting is the fiber that you would get from food. And also remember that your body can only absorb a certain amount of anything at one time. So for people who are like, I'm doing double scoops of protein powder and I'm doing double scoops of greens, your body can't like, it's like information overload. Your body can't digest and absorb all of that. So I am a huge advocate of getting your nutrition from your food. Powders are supplements, right? The word supplement should tell you that it's not a dietary, like, it's not on your my plate, right? It's not part of your diet. It's a supplement to your diet. If you need assistance in that area, great.
So we've talked about my product that I'm developing that I want to sell for the world and I'll retire off of, right? It's called Handful of Greens. And it's going to be great.
I wish you'd brought that and to show everyone what you do, actually.
I did think about it, but I have a rule. I don't eat on microphone, so I think that would break that rule. What I do, how many cups am I supposed to be getting a day, Stephanie, of greens from my protocol? Ballpark?
At a minimum, I think I told you at a minimum 3 cups of greens.
Okay, guys, 3 cups of greens every day. So show me, like, how big is a cup? Like, it's a cup. Okay, everybody noticed that's a handful, right? So Stephanie had these recipes for salads and different things. And I was like, not happening. I'm not doing a salad. I'm not going to sit down and make a vinaigrette. So I just do handful of greens, which I just I bought a big giant tub of greens. I open it. I wash my hands because there's a family here. I reach in and grab a fistful. Actually, I'll call it fistful of greens.
That's better. I like that one.
I literally shove it in my mouth. And the first few times I was doing this, it was unpleasant. It was like really gross. And now I love it. It's literally a treat. And I think I'm getting my 3 cups in every day.
Yeah,
So
and also hint, if you have a hard time getting 3 cups of leafy greens in, or any greens in, have you ever cooked leafy greens? Because 3 cups cooks down to like this, nothing. So if you want to get some quick nourishment in there, you can do that. Greens are so versatile and easy to use. And I mean, those are leafy greens, but we've also got all kinds of other colorful veggies and things and remember that every color gives you a little different phytonutrient profile. So it's look for color. If you're like, I don't know what to eat, Chris likes when I say eat the rainbow. I did not invent that, by the way. That is not my saying, but it's very well known in the nutrition circles. So just look for color, look for ways to add color to your diet, not in a bag of Skittles either from the produce department.
oh, yeah, that's not a vegetable. Okay. Good. Fistful of greens. Watch for it here. I'll give you guys a special discount link. All right. Let's get back to our modifiable
Yeah.
lifestyle factors.
Environmental inputs. This is a big one. We don't think about this, right? So, one of the things I ask is like, have you been exposed to secondhand smoke? I ask clients that. And people are like, nobody smokes at my house. But some of these clients are playing jazz clubs where, up until recently here, people were still able to smoke. So we talked about the building being renovated the hall that I played in. I mean, that thing was mold, right? And yes, it was treated, but then there's all these new building materials that are off-gassing. So are you in a new environment? If you've moved into a new house, do you have new upholstery or paint or something? So there are all kinds of like things that we're surrounded by that, yes, our body is good at getting rid of, but when we are on overload, then we become not so good at getting rid of them because it's just too much for us to handle. Another thing to think about for environmental inputs is the like sort of environment that you find yourself in socially and emotionally, right? Are you in a toxic work environment? Are you in a toxic relationship? Are you not setting boundaries for yourself around your time and around your values? Those inputs also stress your body and contribute to poor health outcomes. So that's what I mean by environmental inputs. And we can't change some of the things, but what we can change is our personal care products, what we cook in, what we choose to put into our bodies, toothpaste, shampoo, how are you affecting your body and how are you affecting the environment? So all of those things.
You mentioned mold, but remember when we moved to Colorado during the pandemic and we were in a brand new construction home? Do you remember this? I had like some kind of a meltdown and you were like, you're in a brand new construction, right? I said, yeah, we rented this house, brand new. And the carpets were off gassing in the bedroom, something. I sound like such a little butterfly, but let me tell you, it kicked my butt. It was not subtle. And the minute that we moved into that place, that started to happen. And it lasted for about a month, I think, before it settled down.
Right.
Julie has a comment here. This is a great hack for getting greens. Kids who are playing video games will munch on anything without even thinking of it. So just stick a bowl of greens or veggies next to them. And that's her hack for her 16-year-old swimmer musician. Great hack, Julie.
Oh,
Thank you for that.
that's a great hack. Yeah, I don't have kids, so I've never actually had that particular battle to fight. Doesn't work on adults, I can tell you that.
Yeah, we can tell pretzel from a pepper any day. All right, what else we have here? Oh, this is we could do a podcast on each of these, but could you just touch on mindset a little bit?
Yeah, mindset. And Chris, I feel like this is something you really address quite a lot when you're helping people prepare for auditions. But there's so much science out there showing that it's kind of like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. So, having an attitude of possibility for yourself, having an attitude of healing, when it comes to dietary change, some people are very resistant and that's makes their journey hard. And I get that. It's okay to have resistance and sometimes it's not the right time. But I think approaching your health, your healing, your performance nutrition kind of with a mindset of curiosity, like, let me try this. Is this going to work for me? Is super important. And I think there's a lot of self-determination in these kind of outcomes that we've maybe given up some agency that we need to take back.
Yep. Mindset is, I believe in the manifestation and law of attraction. And if you're over here tuning into negative frequency or negative habits or negative thoughts, you're going to attract more of that. You're going to align with more of that. You're going to be open and aware of more of that. And that's going to impact your reality for sure.
And it's going to impact your cells and your ability to heal. 100%. Yeah. So we talked about sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement. Do you want to hit that one?
Yeah, let's talk about that. And again, I already hear the little voices inside people's heads. They're like, oh, I'm going to join the gym and go 7 days a week and cut out all the alcohol. And but like, what's like a baby step someone could take in this topic?
In the exercise topic, a baby step that you can take is like, I'm gonna move my body today. What do I feel like doing? Okay. When am I going to do it? Do I have time? All right, I want to go. Okay, I want to go for a walk. I haven't gone for a walk in a long time. Okay, how's the weather outside? Can I go for a walk outside? Yeah, it looks pretty sunny. I could do that. What's my schedule look like? Where do I have time to do that? Oh, well, I want to go in the morning, but I don't. Oh, it looks kind of busy. I don't think I'll get out there. Okay, you don't have to go in the morning. Do you have any time in the middle of the afternoon? Well, I do have a break between my students for an hour. I was just going to kind of sit back and relax. Okay, what do you think about doing a walk then? Yeah, I could do a walk then for an hour. You want to go for an hour? Maybe we make a smaller goal. Maybe you do need some time to relax and not do anything. So what if we say we're going to do 20 minutes or 30 minutes? I think ensuring that your goal is, I mean, you talk about SMART goals, but I think ensuring that your goal is achievable and enjoyable, right? And if you don't want to go for a walk, don't go for a walk. Maybe you want to stretch. Maybe you want to do a yoga video. Maybe you want to salsa dance. I don't know. But do something that you enjoy. Start there. Start with anything. It's kind of that planning thing. You can have all the great intentions in the world. Okay, where are you going to put it? So, yeah, but that sounds maybe harsh. You need to be super kind with yourself when you're making change and give yourself lots of grace, because it's not perfect. It does not happen perfectly. I completely promise you that. And it doesn't have to happen perfectly. It just has to start.
You mentioned enjoyable. So let's add an E to that SMART goal and just call it Smarty. How's your goals going, Smarty? That would be a great one. Just, you got to be enjoyable because you're not going to sustain it. By the way, I figured out that 3 laps around Walt Disney Concert Hall outside on the sidewalk is 1 mile. And sometimes I'll just, during an hour lunch break, I'll just walk around. There's a little bit of a hill there. So if you need some exercise, Angelinos, just walk around Disney Concert Hall 3 times and you got your mile in.
And also, you're getting outdoors, you're getting in the sun, right? Sun, your eyes need to see sun to set those circadian rhythms, right? So if you're up there when if you're out there when the sun's up in the sky brightly, that is so good for your sleep too.
We need to do a whole podcast just on sleep.
I know, I love talking about sleep.
I love sleeping, so we're a match made in heaven. What number 6, resilience stress response.
Yes. Oh, resilience, right? That what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So this is the kind of thing y'all have probably heard about, like Wim Hof techniques, and intermittent fasting is kind of one of these things that people are like, well, it builds resilience. We come to resilience by sort of pushing up against our what we think our wall is, right? And one of the things that we do is, it's like a push and a pull. It's like muscle training, right? So you want to stretch that muscle, but you don't want to tear that muscle. So one of the things that's really important for is our ability to handle stress. And I feel like I get like tongue tied about this. It's a really stressful environment to work in an orchestra. No matter how much you love your job, you are always performing. And so there's a whole, HPA axis in your body that responds to stress. We've got a lot of neurotransmitters that are all about stress, a lot of hormones that are all about stress. And when those are overloaded and we don't take time to build back up, right? We're pushing, 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 and not relaxing. Then we start to have problems, perhaps with cortisol levels. And maybe they're really high and we're constantly revving, or maybe they're really low and we are flatlined and we can't, stay upright for an entire day. So things that we can do, there are a lot of herbal adaptogens that I like to use for that. Holy basil tea, Tulsi tea, is a great nervine and a very, very mild adaptogen that if you find yourself someone who's stressed, I'm going to just say, can you take a little break out of your day and try a cup of holy basil tea? And you'll be taking a break, which is something your body needs, rest. And you're also putting this really helpful herb in your system to maybe help you deal with stress a little bit better. Not to be taken as medical advice. But there are lots of techniques that we kind of push, that we want to do to build our stress response.
I just shot a commercial in my brain for holy basil, and it was like
holy basil. No,
holy basil. That's good tea. Okay, relationships and community. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about structures that you have in place for yourself when we were talking about like rhythm and routine and all of that. You need to have safe people there that you can cry, vent, scream, laugh, whatever in front of, and feel supported by, feel seen by, and in your community. And for us, maybe it's your orchestral community, and maybe it's your neighborhood, maybe it's your, larger family. What are those relationships like? And do you have people identified who can, fill those spots for you? Because I think sometimes when we're in a smaller community, we expect one person to do all the heavy lifting for us, but we really need lots of people in place, right? We need our medical practitioners. We need our friends. We need, mentors. We need people who are going to tell us the truth and we need to hear it, and give us a hug when we need one. And, people who don't have those supports are less resilient to stress, and they have poorer health outcomes and actually poorer career longevity in studies.
Well, speaking of community and resources and longevity, that's one of the reasons that I created the Honesty Pill community, this Facebook group, my clients, this podcast. I feel like it really connects me with people who are talking about things that aren't only job related. I have a lot of conversations about my job and operating the trumpet and all that kind of thing too, which I love. But I think this stuff's important to talk about, and that's why I love these conversations. So, guys.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you're doing that, Chris.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks for being a part of it today too.
And I think that's what's been missing, right? Which is why I wanted to do what I do too. So I love that you're bringing people together over these topics.
Is this resonating with you guys? Are you kind of connecting with some of the things Stephanie's saying? Are you noticing patterns or lack of patterns or planning in your own life, that areas where you could probably be improving? I know that, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have Stephanie on, is that I feel like I've learned so much in talking to her and just talking to someone who can sort of prod me and get me to think about these things. I hope it is. Speaking of community, Stephanie, I want to talk about your program coming up, because it's coming up like really soon, and I want to fill it. If you guys are listening, do yourself a favor and go check out this page. Stephanie's website is NOLA. So the word well 3 times and then NOLA, NOLA.com, and go to Play Like an Artist, Fuel Like an Athlete, 6-week program for musicians who want to optimize their health for artistic excellence. Stephanie, talk about this while I scroll down this page a little bit.
Yeah, I brought up I brought up Simone Biles earlier, just as an example of an athlete. And it occurred to me, there is not a competitive athlete at any level, at the high school level, who doesn't consider nutrition as part of their training. And I'm like, why don't we do that? Well, there is so much you can do. I think many times, and I was guilty of this as well, we get very stuck on the, like, you've heard this before, like the human doing, not the human being. And so I really wanted people to understand that if you aren't fueling your instrument, like I always say, we are our primary instrument. Like singers know this, but like even if you play the trumpet or the violin or the clarinet or whatever, it all starts with you. And if you're not functioning at your best, I don't care what kind of fancy, expensive instrument you have. I don't care who you're studying with. I kind of don't even care how much you're practicing or how well you're practicing. If you are not fueling yourself, you are not going to be in top condition, and reaching your goals is going to be so much harder. This was day and night for me when I changed my health. And that's why I really put this program together, because I want musicians to start to talk about this and start to understand this and start to see the difference that these small changes can make for them.
So you have this broken down into 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned this at the top of the podcast, tapping into your body's natural rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
managing digestive issues on travel. Oh, we didn't even talk about eating and tours. That'll be for our part 2. We should definitely do a part 2 soon. Eating for balanced energy. We talked about that. Tactics to enhance your mood, focus, and memory. Week 5 is nutritional approaches to pain and overuse syndromes. That's interesting. And number 6, tips and tools to keep your immune system healthier. Yep, even during holiday gig season. So what is the investment? What is the cost for this program?
Yeah, so this is the first time I've put this together, and the cost is $297 for a 6-week program. You're going to get
awesome.
Once a week. You're going to get like a little tiny educational content video dropped. I'm also going to have a little lab activity for you. Sometimes it might be meal planning. Who knows? We're going to just have some little activities you can try, totally optional. And then we are going to have once a week a group coaching with me, so you can ask questions, let me know how these things are working for you, and just get a little bit more personal attention about your own nutrition.
And you could also see at the bottom of this page, if you guys are not on Stephanie's email list, you will be missing out on emails with subject titles like, what was it? How are you in bed? Tell me what it was again.
Are you good in bed? Yeah.
Are you good in bed? So I just got that email from Stephanie. Are you good in bed? And I was like, go on. Well, tell me about that email really quickly.
Yeah. That email was kind of about the importance of sleep. Womp womp. Probably disappointing, not as exciting, as juicy as you might think. But it was about the importance of sleep, which is, we kind of hit on some of those things today when we were talking about, but just that this is such a great starting point. Sleep is available to everyone. I didn't say sleep is easy for everyone, but it is available to everyone. And so if you're struggling with that, I highly suggest you call me.
Love it. All right. So Play Like an Artist, Feel Like an Athlete is starting in February. NOLA.com. I'll put this in the show notes and also send this out with the replay. But check it out, guys. Take advantage of this program. I've been a client of Stephanie's for 2 years now. It's like, since Pagosa, so longer than that.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. But okay, I have one last question for you, which is sort of my signature question here, which is, can you recall a distinct honesty pill moment where a hard truth or obstacle stood in your way, and how has that addressing that impacted on where you are today? So what was your honesty pill moment?
There were so many, Chris. I will tell you I'll tell you one of my honesty pill moments. When I did some functional testing, and I was like, oh, please don't let it be XYZ. I don't want to have to give up this food and that food because I love this food and that food. And guess what? It was XYZ. And I gave up this food and that food. And I went home, like, after I got the news, I'm like, I cried, and I did it. And, it's so easy to do. It's so hard to disengage from something that you identified with. And this could be a food, this could be a habit, a practice, a person. It could be so many things. But that was one of my honesty pill moments is like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. I never want to feel this sick again. So I'm going to do this. So I did it. And it was that was kind of the thing that I think showed me how important this was for all of us. So, yeah.
That's huge. Well, so far I've been pretty lucky with my health, but when we first started working together, I did also have something where I was like, oh, cortisol is a thing. And for people who are highly stressed or have stressful jobs, knowing what your cortisol levels for me was a health game changer. And it really, again, I say beat me over the head because that's just how I talk, but it really opened my eyes to, you did not beat me over the head, although you could if you wanted to.
But I can, yeah.
You can, you know where I live, but it was a game changer. And that was an honesty pill moment that I cannot, I just want to say one thing that Stephanie mentioned, which was, she said to me once, you have a really stressful job. She mentioned that already in our conversation. And I thought, I'm not stressed. I don't get nervous. I love my job. She's like, yeah, but you have a stressful job. And from here up, you're not aware of it. But from here down, your body is aware of it. And that's why these cortisol levels are off the charts. And so I had to, that was definitely an honesty pill moment for me. And I had to start making some real changes. So thank you for being there for that. That was life-changing and maybe even life-saving.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to do that. This work's so important to me. And, I don't want to see people suffer. I don't want to see people, end their careers before they want to. And I just think feeling good when you're young is something that we take for granted, and even into middle age. But I think not everybody gets that gift. And I think that we all have to consider what are we doing right now that's going to support how I perform, function, walk, think when I'm 70 or older. And it sounds so far away when you're 30. But if you want this career, if you want to have a life that you enjoy, which is really more important than any career, right? It's life-saving.
As we wrap up, can you just tell our listeners what they should be looking for in their inboxes when they subscribe to Well Functional Nutrition?
Well, besides pithy little comments in the subject line, I like to share what's coming up in my practice. I like to share recommendations of books and resources, observations on what might be helpful with energy, what might be helpful with gut health. I send out recipes sometimes. Sometimes I send out weird pictures from the streets of New Orleans. A little bit of a grab bag, and I'm working on being more consistent with my newsletters. So yeah, and I kind of focus my subjects on musician health and women's hormone health.
Awesome. Stephanie, thank you. I definitely feel like we're going to have a part 2 later this year because there's a lot we didn't even get to cover. Everybody go check out Play Like an Artist, Fuel Like an Athlete. Do yourself a favor, spend the $300. It's going to be cheaper than a heart valve replacement when you're 80 or whatever. I don't know where that came from, but
it's cheaper than a mouthpiece.
Definitely cheap. You don't need another mouthpiece, by the way. All right, I'll put all that in the show notes, of course. Hey, everybody, thank you for listening. By the way, if you're enjoying this podcast, please head over to my YouTube channel, Honesty Pill Coaching for Musicians. Subscribe and make sure you like this video so I can keep this free content coming to all of you. All right, everybody, that's it for me. I'm out of here. Happy practicing, and I'll see you next time.